The 13th of November 1974 was the night Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot his mother, his father, and his 4 sisters while they slept, and the most terrifying part was not the blood, not the gunshots, but the silence. No screams echoed through the house, no neighbors heard a struggle, every body was found lying straight in bed as if death itself had gently tucked them in. And later Ronald would say only this: "I heard voices, voices that told me to kill." That night wrapped 112 Ocean Avenue in a darkness so thick it felt alive, as if the house itself had been holding its breath for years, waiting for the exact second when evil would finally be unleashed. And when the first bullet tore through the quiet air of Amityville, New York, something ancient and hungry awakened within those walls, something that would never truly leave, because even before the murders, locals whispered that the land beneath the house was cursed, once used as a place where the Shinnecock tribe abandoned the sick and dying, a place where suffering soaked into the soil and refused to fade. And Ronald DeFeo Jr., a troubled, angry, drug-addicted young man, seemed less like the cause of the horror and more like its chosen instrument, moving through the house in the early hours of the morning with a rifle in his hands and an emptiness behind his eyes, firing shot after shot into the bodies of his own family, yet somehow none of them ran, none of them fought back, none of them even turned over in their beds, as if an unseen force pressed them down, pinning them to their mattresses while death approached, room by room. And when dawn finally came and Ronald staggered into a local bar shouting that his parents had been shot, the police returned with him to a scene so disturbing it defied logic. 6 bodies, face down or face up, neatly arranged by fate, no signs of struggle, no neighbors awakened by gunfire, and a house that felt wrong, heavy, watching. And though Ronald confessed and was eventually sentenced to life in prison, his story kept changing, sometimes claiming he acted alone, sometimes claiming his sister helped him, and sometimes insisting that demonic voices drove him mad, voices that grew louder at night, voices that came from the walls, the floors, the darkness itself. And while the world tried to explain it away as mental illness or drugs, the house stood silent, waiting for its next victims, which arrived just 1 year later in December 1975 when the Lutz family, George, Kathy, and their 3 children, moved into 112 Ocean Avenue, drawn by the beautiful riverside view and the unbelievably low price. Never imagining that the walls they admired had once echoed with gunfire and death, and from the very first night, the house began to reveal its true nature, cold spots forming without warning, strange smells of rotten sulfur filling the air, and an overwhelming sense of being watched, especially at 3:15 a.m., the exact time Ronald DeFeo Jr. had begun his killing spree. When George would wake up night after night drenched in sweat, drawn downstairs by an invisible pull, standing in the dark staring at the river as if something was calling him, while Kathy experienced violent nightmares and felt unseen hands touching her in her sleep, and the children spoke casually of an imaginary friend named Jody, a red-eyed pig-like creature that smiled from the shadows of their bedroom, and the house grew angrier with each passing day, doors slamming on their own, green slime oozing from the walls, flies swarming rooms in the dead of winter, and George slowly changing, his personality darkening, his face twisted with rage, until he began to resemble Ronald DeFeo Jr. himself, as if the house was reshaping him, preparing him to repeat the same blood-soaked history. And when a priest came to bless the house, he was violently rejected, a deep voice roaring, "Get out!" as his hands burned and blistered. And though skeptics would later argue about exaggeration and hoaxes, The terror the Lutz family felt was real enough that after only 28 days they fled the house in the middle of winter, leaving behind all their belongings, convinced that if they stayed even one more night, the house would consume them entirely. And yet the horror did not end there, because stories of Amityville spread like a disease, inspiring books, movies, and endless investigations, and those who visited the house reported sudden headaches, nausea, overwhelming fear, and the feeling of being pushed or touched by unseen hands, while psychics claimed to see shadow figures moving through the halls, hear children crying, and sense a presence that was neither human nor willing to let go. And even after renovations changed the iconic windows that once looked like glowing eyes, even after new families moved in claiming nothing unusual ever happened, the legend refused to die, because places like 112 Ocean Avenue do not need constant activity to remain haunted. They remember, they absorb, they wait, and the murders of the 13th of November 1974 remain etched into its foundation like a curse written in blood, a reminder that sometimes horror does not announce itself with screams or chaos, sometimes it arrives quietly, slipping into bedrooms while families sleep, guided by whispers no one else can hear, and the most frightening question still lingers in the air of Amityville long after the gunshots faded. Were the voices Ronald DeFeo Jr. heard born inside his broken mind, or were they the true voice of the house itself, finally finding someone weak enough to obey? Fearful face.